Becker. I'm a registered nurse, and this is Nursing Analysis. Today, we will be covering the respiratory system. We must remember, a person can live a few weeks without food, a few days without water, but only a few minutes without air. Oxygen is therefore the most crucial element for survival. The organs of the respiratory system include the nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchia, and the lungs and the alveoli. The lungs permit movement of air into the alveoli. Inside the alveoli, oxygen from the air is exchanged for carbon dioxide, which is the waste product of cellular metabolism. Here, the air is also warmed and moistened as it passes through the respiratory system. Pollen and dust can be trapped by the mucus produced by the lining of the respiratory passages. The respiratory system is also involved in regulation of acid-base balance in the body. The two basic functions are the facilitation of air and the exchange of gas in the body. Oxygen must be supplied to the body's cells, and the cellular waste or carbon dioxide must be removed. The sinuses are also associated with the respiratory system. They impact speech and or sound production. They are also responsible for olfaction, which, remember, is the sense of smell. The respiratory system consists of both an upper and lower tract. All of the organs associated with the upper tract are found outside of the chest or the thoracic cavity. The organs of the lower tract are located in the thoracic cavity. The upper respiratory tract will include the nose, the pharynx, and larynx. The lower tract includes the trachea, the bronchial tree, and the lungs. Think of the respiratory system as an upside-down tree, starting with the trachea, also known as the windpipe, as the trunk of the tree, and the bronchial extensions as branches of its tree, which ends with the tiny microscopic grape-like structures at the ends, and these are known as alveoli. This is where the gas exchange takes place. We shall now discuss specific organs in the respiratory system. Inhaled air enters the nose. The nose is divided by a septum or wall into two separate openings, also known as nostrils or nares. The inhaled air proceeds into the nasal cavities, both right and left sides. These cavities are lined with a membrane known as mucosa. This membranous outer lining is made up of pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. It contains goblet cells that secrete mucus. These cells are covered with cilia. These protective mechanisms prevent irritants from reaching the lower respiratory tract. The mucus is a very important deterrent. Over 100 milliliters is secreted daily. Together with the cilia, they propel upwards to remove trapped particles by pushing them towards the pharynx. As mentioned earlier, the right and left nasal cavities are separated by a wall known as the septum. A moist, warm environment is created at the surface of the nasal cavities. This is related to the mucus and surrounding blood flow. Also located in the nasal mucosa are the olfactory receptors. These receptors are able to sense smell. There are spaces or cavities located close to the nose inside the bones that form this area known as sinuses. The frontal, maxillary, sphenoidal, and ethmoid. All of these sinuses, or paranasal sinuses, as they are known, drain into the nasal cavities. These areas can become infected as the mucosa of the nose is continuous with the paranasal sinuses. These sinuses are important as they aid in the production of mucus to be used in the respiratory tract. Their hollow structures also helps to lessen the weight of the skull and helps with the production of sound. The tear ducts, also known as lacrimal ducts, also drain into the nasal cavity. The nasal cavities also have three structures that increase the surface area for air to flow through the nasal cavities. These three structures are the superior, middle, and inferior conchae. The air becomes warmed and humidified when passing through these structures. This explains why nose breathing is preferred over mouth breathing, as air needs to be purified, humidified, and warmed to prevent drying of the mucosa. We shall now discuss the pharynx, also known as the throat. It includes three sections: the nasopharynx, which sits directly behind the nasal cavities, the oropharynx, which is behind the mouth, and the laryngopharynx, the lowest portion of the pharynx, and is also the passageway for both food and air. The air it processes leaves through the larynx, and the food leaves through the esophagus. It is important to note the nasopharynx also connects to the eustachian tubes, as to connect the middle ear to the nasopharynx. This connection equalizes air pressure, and this is also why respiratory tract infections can result in middle ear infections. The pharynx also contains tonsils. This lymphatic tissue helps with defensive mechanisms. The pharyngeal tonsils are located in the nasopharynx, and the oropharynx contains the palatine tonsils. We will now discuss the larynx, also known as the voice box. The composition of this organ is made mostly of cartilage. This structure is located below the pharynx and contains the commonly known Adam's apple. The larynx also contains vocal cords. Muscles pull on these cords to provide tension or relaxation and enable them to produce sound. A high-pitched sound can be caused by tension on the cords, and a low-pitched sound is created when the cords are relaxed. The space between the vocal cords is the glottis and the opening into the larynx. This is covered by the epiglottis. The epiglottis closes during swallowing to prevent food from entering the trachea. Let's now discuss the trachea. The trachea is commonly known as the windpipe. It processes air. The trachea contains mucociliary escalator, which produces and moves mucus. This escalator is important in trapping and eliminating irritants. We will now discuss the bronchus, both right and left sides. The initial bronchi is formed off of the trachea and branch into a single bronchus on both the right and left sides in the lungs. They eventually further divide into bronchioles. These are passageways made up of tiny tubes composed of smooth muscle. At the end of the bronchioles are the microscopic alveolar ducts. These form in grape-like structures of alveolar sacs. This is where oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged. The alveoli are made up of simple squamous epithelial cells. The respiratory membrane between the alveoli and capillaries of the blood is very thin. It's approximately 1 micron. The millions of alveoli consume enormous surface area, which enables oxygen and carbon dioxide to be exchanged at a rapid rate. Surfactant is a substance that is found in the alveoli that reduces the surface tension and prevents atelectasis or collapsing of the alveoli. We will now discuss the lungs. The right lung has 3 lobes and the left lung has 2 lobes. The base of each lung is found on top of the diaphragm, and the apex of each lung is found behind the collarbone. The lungs are covered by a sac known as the pleura. There are 2 layers of the pleura: the parietal layer or outer layer, which lines the thoracic cavity, and the visceral layer or inner layer that attaches directly to the lungs. In between the parietal and visceral layers, there is a space called the intrapleural cavity. This cavity contains fluid that keeps the parietal and visceral layers moist and slippery. There's about 5 cc's of fluid. If this space becomes inflamed, the term used to describe this condition is a pleurisy. The pleural membranes will rub together, resulting in painful respirations for the patient. If air becomes trapped in the intrapleural space, it will increase the pressure of that lung and could lead to atelectasis of the lung. This is known as a pneumothorax. Let's now discuss some important terms in relation to the respiratory system. So, what is respiration? Well, it's the exchange of gases, particularly oxygen and carbon dioxide. What is ventilation? Ventilation is the process that moves air into and out of the lungs, commonly known as external respiration. The exchange of gases between the blood and the body is known as internal respiration. What is inspiration? Inspiration moves air into the lungs during each inhale, and expiration moves air out of the lungs as we exhale. So, it is that time again. You guessed it. It is our rhyme time review. Today we begin a new story in a different system known as respiratory. We start with the nares that filters the air, lined with mucus to trap foreign debris, to prevent them from entering the bronchial tree. Oxygen is exchanged with alveoli allowance as it rids the body of carbon dioxide to maintain acid-base balance. Oxygen enters the blood and takes a ride, using attached hemoglobin as its guide. There is so much more to tell, as the oxygen is needed in every single cell. As the cells get an aerobic taste, it also is able to release its waste. Back in the blood, the waste will go. Now to the back of the nose, we know what is next. This is the beginning of the nasopharynx. Just down south into the back of the mouth. What can we expect? This is the beginning of the oropharynx. Now take a vote for the third section of the throat. There are 3 sections of the pharynx, so only one more to go. This part of the pharynx starts with laryngo. The laryngo is a passageway for the mouth and nair as it processes both food and air. The nasopharynx connects to the ear, so sometimes middle ear infections can appear. This connection keeps the air fresher as it equalizes its pressure. Away from the throat, we now must note as the air proceeds in specks through the larynx. The food is rushed through the esophagus. Remember, the throat is full. It contains the pharyngeal and palatine tonsils. Now remember the sound the voice box compounds. Remember tension and high-pitched suspension. We can also afford to relax the cords. Now the sound will switch and we will speak low-pitched. Now when we swallow, the epiglottis will follow, keeping the food from entering the trach, as air is the only thing it will take. Through the trachea the air will rush, bifurcating at left and right bronchus, down to the holes of the bronchioles. We give this exchange a try, as the oxygen enters the alveoli. With a pass, the exchange will cast. To complete this ride, we expel carbon dioxide, and in its space, oxygen will replace, and back to the cell it will trace. Just remember the sac that covers each lung tract from front to back. The pleura in its 2 layers. Let's discuss how they compare. The parietal wall on the outside, the trench in the middle that softens the slide. The smooth visceral is directly attached to each of the lungs. It is latched. It is now time to end this story. In the next video, we will share more glory as we discuss the pathophysiology of the respiratory. Thank you for taking the time to learn with Nursing Analysis. Remember to like and subscribe to help support the production of future videos and educational content.
Looking for the right nursing school to help attain your dream of becoming a nurse? Medical Prep Institute's nursing program offers an accelerated track to your new nursing career. Our nursing program is taught by experienced and qualified nursing faculty. Students will receive training in all of the core nursing courses and in a wide variety of NCLEX preparation courses to help students gain critical thinking skills and a comprehensive nursing knowledge needed to be successful in the healthcare field. Upon successful completion of the Registered Nursing Program and Clinical Practicum, graduates are eligible to apply to sit for the National Council Licensure Exam for Registered Nurses. So, don't wait, contact us today.